Welcome to the Empirical Storytellers Podcast, the show where I interview extraordinary people doing extraordinary things at the intersections of data, AI, and leadership. Today, I'm going to be talking about Ori, who is a mayoral candidate for the city of Orillia, which is a small town in Ontario, Canada. But here's the twist. Ori isn't actually human. Ori is an AI. Ori, spelled O-R-I, was created by two tech entrepreneurs, David Caplan and Jordan Rossman, as a sort of experiment to see what kind of role AI could play in driving greater government transparency and civic engagement. And no, Ori is not actually going to be on the ballot at the next mayoral election in Orillia, but Ori is creating a lot of buzz about the potential role and implications of AI when it comes to civic engagement and government transparency. You can chat with Ori and get historical information or context about policies, councillor voting records, or other things like that. But you can also engage with Ori and have an active conversation about socioeconomic issues, policies, or even use it as a way to synthesize data about public discourse or views that are voiced online. In today's interview, I sat down with Ori's creators. David Caplan is a CTO at a company called Twos, and he's also the founder of Startup Orillia, which is a community of founders, technologists, creatives, and the like. And Jordan Rossman is a founding member of Startup Orillia, and he's also a real estate and technology entrepreneur. In this interview, we cover everything from why they created Ori and what their objectives were, how exactly it was built, the social implications of Ori, and what the response has been so far. It's a really interesting discussion, so let's jump straight in. Jordan and David, thank you so much for joining today. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, thank you.
So today we're going to be talking about something really interesting. So you both have developed a rather fascinating use of AI, which is a AI-driven mayoral candidate for the city of Orillia. And this has been going a little bit viral. A lot of people who live in Orillia, I think, have been engaging with the website you've developed. You've also gotten some pretty cool press coverage, including a recent interview with the CBC. And I played around with it a lot myself, and I think it's really cool. So I just wanted to talk to you both a little bit today about what is Ori, why did you build it, what's the reception been so far. So maybe as a starting point, and Jordan, I'll throw this to you first, and David, you can jump in if you like. Tell me, what is Ori?
Yeah, Dave and I happened to be, I think we were texting probably about robots around the same time that Don McIsaac, the current mayor of Orillia, announced that he was not going to be running for re-election. And Dave just texted me, I've got a crazy idea. And I think before I said, what was the idea? I was like, are we going to build a robot to run for mayor? And I think our brains both went to the same place. And we were like, let's do it. And in typical fashion, maybe 4 or 5 hours later, we had done some investigating and some preliminary building, and we had something that was like, okay, we can build off of this. And then the rest was history so far in terms of we just kept building, and we're like, let's just see what this looks like. Let's throw it out there with zero expectation, identify opportunities for improvement along the way, and just see if people absolutely hate this or if it's something that turns out to be useful.
I would say you knew immediately that it would strike a chord with people. It's like a crazy idea, and I think it just made sense at the time to just give it a go, honestly.
For anyone who's watching that hasn't kind of caught up with this, Ori is essentially an AI chatbot that you can talk to on a website and is meant to be canvassing as a mayoral candidate. Ori has their own positions and things like that. So basically, Ori's reason for existence is essentially to engage with the public and talk about or almost simulate what a mayoral candidate would do or should be doing when it comes to thinking about and cultivating municipal policy. Is that correct?
I think there's two buckets. There's this useful tool that we've built where Ori has been scraping and ingesting a ton of information on the city of Orillia. So most cities have most of their important information is public domain. So anybody can go in and access that information. And so Ori has gone and collected close to 10,000 documents between the city of Orillia, news stories about Orillia. We've pointed it in a few key directions to find factual information of what's actually happening in Orillia. So there's this chatbot tool that has access to all of the information that Orillia has publicly available. And then there's the persona of Ori. We've all learned through building various projects that there's build the cool tool, but then you also need this distribution aspect. And so the fact that Ori's running for mayor, but Ori won't actually be on the ballot is the distribution channel, if you will, to get people to come and actually see and use this tool that we've built.
Yeah, I want to add that I think the two main things that make it an interesting project is one, it's just naturally interesting and exciting, and some people hate it, some people love it. And I think that was the driving force. So I run a group in Orillia called Startup Orillia. I really wanted to leverage something, to promote the group. And so I kind of see Ori as an amazing way to do that. Just like put Orillia on the map, put Startup Orillia on the map, show what kind of cool stuff we're building. And the other side of it is it's a genuinely interesting technology and really useful tool. And we can talk about how that works as well. I think it's fun and it's useful. And I think like when I work on things, those are pretty much the two main ingredients I find.
If you think about the end users, like the citizens of Orillia, what was the objective from a end user perspective? Is it to help them gain more understanding of key issues? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, when you look at the number of documents that Ori has ingested and gone through, it's really hard to do that. You're not going to go read 9,000 documents to be able to understand every aspect of the city. So from a resident perspective, it's a great way to get simple questions answered really quickly. It also ups the ante and ups the quality of a conversation that could be had. A common thing we keep hearing about is saying, why are my property taxes going up? Because Orillia is increasing their property taxes. The information that's hard to sift through and find in that particular scenario is that a lot of the municipal tax revenue goes to certain provincial requirements that are baked into the budget, and the city actually has no say in it. So Ori is identifying that and bringing that to the forefront of the conversation for people. So residents may be able to ask more informed questions of the city, and city staff, on the other hand, probably spend a ton of time going through these incredibly long bylaws and budgets and meeting minutes. And so it equips the city staff and city servants with this ability to go and find key things. They know it exists, but it's hard to go find it, and Ori can just bring that to the forefront right away.
Yeah, I would also add, you're seeing a lot of people just go to ChatGPT when they want to fact check something, which obviously we know it's not the best tool for that, but people do it anyway because it is getting better. It can look things up. And providing a tool like Ori to just regular people gives them a way to do that, but specifically targeting municipal documents and local information, which is not necessarily going to be pulled in when you hit ChatGPT up. The other thing that is interesting is it provides, specifically for regular citizens of Orillia, it provides them with a kind of place where they can voice their concerns and opinions in a space that is, to a certain extent, fact-checked. It can give them actual, real intelligent response. If they ask a question or they have a criticism or a complaint, it can give them a lot more context that they just may not have.
Yeah, this first phase of Ori is just trying to get as many people in the city to interact with it. And right now it's just gathering information, gathering. And the second phase of this will be empowering Ori to say, okay, based on the conversations that you've had, how would some of your existing positions change? Or would you come up with new positions? Would you completely change your mind? And Ori, over time, the more it interacts with the people in Orillia, will be able to come up with more informed positions and thoughts.
That's interesting. It sounds like there's also a strong opportunity for data capture and synthesis here. It's not just Ori's ability to respond and help people understand the information or data behind certain policies or issues, but it's also an input. Like, it's a way for potentially the city of Orillia or municipal government to collect data on opinions and concerns. Exactly. Not that there aren't other channels for that, but this is a very unique channel where you're also able to capture the data at scale and also synthesize it. So there could also be a lot of value, I guess, to the municipal government to use this data and use it to create better policy.
Yeah, not to get political. None of Ori is any of my positions or Dave's positions, but for example, there's been no shortage of controversies in the city of Orillia recently. And at one point, the current mayor was quoted saying, "This is the will of the people." Maybe it isn't, but then there was a ton of comments under that saying, like, how did you identify what the will of the people actually was? And right now, most cities, Orillia is definitely a good example, either doesn't have a channel for actually identifying what the will of the people is on something, or if they do have that tool, they're not using it very well, or at least not using it transparently.
In terms of like the future of a tool like Ori being owned and operated and managed and configured by a commercial company or a nonprofit or the government itself, like a municipal government, do you have any opinions on should Ori remain out of the hands of like a government body so that it can remain independent? Or do you think that technology could be appropriately integrated into the tool set of a municipal government?
I think it depends on how it works. It depends on how it works. If it's fully autonomous, doesn't matter who's owning it. It's assuming you trust them and you can see how it's working and how it's coming up with information, how it's getting information, transparency, etc. It really depends, honestly. Right now, yeah, it's just literally Jordan and I that are running it. You just have to trust that we're not telling it to lean a certain way politically or not. That's just the way it works today, but we've had discussions about making it almost fully autonomous, which is just pushing the experiment one step further. It can update its own website. It can do what it wants. That's an experiment that we need to run, and that's kind of part of the roadmap of Ori, I would say.
Yeah, I think one of the key fundamental things that sort of answers this question is that Ori was built with the purpose of being completely transparent. So there is a page on Ori's site for Ori's constitution that lays out very clearly, here's what I am, here's how I work, here's what I do, here's what I can't do, here's who built me. This may be a terrible idea, but even pushing it further, on maybe one day we decide to put the actual system prompt that's going to the LLM available for people to see.
I was about to say that was where I was literally going to go to next, is just open sourcing Ori. And open sourcing AI is an interesting concept because you can go all the way down to the code base, but like open sourcing the system prompts is actually a really interesting first step. So that's something you would consider for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that even when I've been asked in some of these interviews and Dave's been asked, have you baked any of your political views into it? Of course, the answer is no. And then it's occurred to me, there's such a mistrust in politics in general. You have to believe that whoever's running it, whether it's municipal, public sector, or private sector, you have to believe what they're claiming and what they're saying. And open sourcing it, certain aspects of it, is potentially a good idea in terms of transparency, because Ori really has no baked-in opinions. People have asked in the chat, are you left-leaning, right-leaning? And it answers, I'm neither. I weigh every single question independently and use the information I have access to. It's
interesting because you can imagine a future in which there are multiple Oris, each with their own preferences. At the end of the day, people have literal preferences, completely subjective preferences with what should be done with limited resources. I don't know what it's going to do, but I'm just saying anybody can build their own Ori. Anybody can do that these days. And in the future, you might have Oris debating each other. But then it occurs to me, that's what people do in the council meetings. And it's where I think another aspect that's interesting about this is where is the line between the human element and the computer element? And that's another kind of thing that Jordan and I have been discussing about it and trying to understand and try to get to, because I think that's the whole crux of the argument, what people either love or hate about it. It boils down to that.
There are objective answers that Ori can just provide you the answer. What's the tax increase going to be this year? Ori can just answer it. There are subjective questions. Should a city be focusing on economic development? There are members of the community in Orillia that are like, no, I love this old feeling small town Orillia. I grew up here. I love the small vibe. There's other people that are like, no, we should be growing and bringing in more people. Those are subjective answers. But what I've seen is that people understand that politicians are going to have a particular preference and they have to land on either side of these subjective questions. But generally speaking, people don't want is this counselor voted for this because the other counselor that brought up this motion is a friend of theirs and they're towing the party line and they're going to support their friend in council versus I'm going to vote against it because I've got a grudge against this person. Those are the types of things where a tool like this can really weed out I don't have any friends on council, I don't have any alliances within council or the whatever governing body this is, and doesn't feel this pressure to make decisions that are not necessarily the best interest of the residents.
It's basically like any technology. It's getting rid of the really hard and annoying stuff so that the humans in politics, they're running the government, can focus on the truly nitty-gritty hard decisions that need to be made that do require some element of human creativity.
Can you tell me a little bit about how Ori was built? Maybe start off with a high-level architectural kind of summary, like which models, how is it stitched together? And from there, I think I definitely want to get to the underlying data that it's referencing, but let's start off with the overall build and architecture.
Basically, it's a combination of a front-end website. The website, Jordan mostly worked on that and basically crafted and used his own, I would say, philosophy around transparency to go through and describe the positioning and describe how Ori presents itself. The website itself, it has positions, it has philosophy, it has stuff like that, and it's got a chatbot interface, a conversational interface. And from there, it goes into a back-end system, which essentially it uses Anthropic models for the most part, Sonnet and Opus, depending on the need. It also does use OpenAI, so it uses a mix of models for different purposes. So the data pipeline pulls data from different news sources like Orillia Matters and stuff like that. And it pulls data every day from the civic kind of web data repository that Orillia maintains. I guess Orillia and many other places, they maintain just a website that has just a bunch of PDFs, the agendas, the minutes, and then on YouTube, you have the transcripts from the actual meetings. So every day, Ori goes and it pulls all that data. And then it basically uses a series of tools in the pipeline. It uses this thing called Dockling. It's a tool that basically takes PDFs and extracts all the stuff into text.
Like OCR, probably.
Basically, it's a whole bunch of different ways to get data out of PDFs. So it does that. But the key thing about it is that it remembers where in the document everything came from. So it can point back exactly and say, in this place, in this page, in this paragraph, this was mentioned or whatever. So then it goes through sort of the OpenAI embedding model. So it chunks it all up into little slices and puts it into vectors and drops it into SQL database. So we use this thing called Terso, which is like SQLite, because we're based on Vercel. And anyways, we went for the easiest and cheapest way that we could get this thing working to show the proof of concept. And so essentially that's what it does. It dumps everything in to SQLite and basically stores it in the database, and it just updates that every day. And so that's the data pipeline portion.
It sounds like there was an initial ingestion of a massive docket of files. So
Yes.
Jordan, you said something like 10,000.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just comment quickly on like how big is that initial base and how much data? What's the velocity of new data being added, just so I can get a general
Okay,
sense?
yeah. So initially it was, I don't know the numbers, but there was like over 9,000 documents, 9,000 PDFs and articles and things from all over. We did an initial run. I don't know, I ran it overnight or something like that. It went through everything and dropped it in the database, and something like a gigabyte of data in the database. It's not a massive amount of data, but it's a reasonable amount. And every day it's just whatever happened the past 24 hours. So it's not like a hell of a lot. It grabs like news articles. And if there happens to be data from the civic web place, it grabs it, but that's only every few weeks, really. It's not like a daily thing. And then more recently, we added a pipeline to pull YouTube transcripts. Those are pretty massive sometimes. So we haven't been doing those as regularly, but I think it's something that it should probably do as it goes, because there's a lot of useful subtleties in those transcripts.
Can you give me a high-level summary of a categorization of the types of data that's being pulled in? It sounds like it's got PDFs that might relate to zoning laws and all that stuff, but it also sounds like you're sucking up meeting minutes from like government sessions. Just give me the high-level kind of organization of those different buckets of data that are going in.
Yeah, so at a core level, the city has two types of information. There's the static information that is, a perfect example would be the bylaw of something that rarely has meaningful changes made to it. There'll be amendments through council and that sort of stuff, but you have these sort of bigger, more standalone documents that are just good to know for Ori and great reference points. And then, especially now when there's a lot of controversy happening in Orillia on different political matters, you have the context that's added mainly through council meetings and special meetings within council. And so that helps Ori identify, maybe there was this bylaw amendment, but which councillors voted yes, which councillors voted no. And so the council minutes and the meeting agendas provide a lot of context to those bigger data pieces like a bylaw or a budget that change less frequently. And so what we've seen through the chat, just in users interacting with it, is oftentimes they're less interested on what's the rule on this, and they're more interested on who voted yay or nay on this change and those types of things. And especially as we have real mayoral candidates who are running for mayor, who are both currently council members, people want to understand their positions and understand what they've voted for and what they've supported and not supported. And so from the city's perspective, there's these standalone, don't change all that often documents, and then there's the council meetings that provide a lot of context, and those happen more frequently.
Got it. You've mentioned twice a ongoing or recent controversy in Orillia. I don't live in Orillia, so I don't quite know what's going on. My question for you, or either of you, is can you give a general summarization of what that is, and how do you think that Ori's presence right now is actually helping in maybe offering citizens more context or an outlet because of this particular issue? Like, do you think Ori has a role related to these in solving this particular controversy?
Yeah, there's two controversial issues that seem to be in the forefront of people's minds in the last year, one more recent than others. And truthfully, the public's really split on how to handle these things. So number one is we had this Champlain monument, this statue of Samuel de Champlain down at the Port of Orillia. Of course, there's a lot of factors to consider with First Nations communities and the people of Orillia. Some people want the statue down, some people want the statue changed, some people want the statue gone. Recently, the mayor, he was tasked very vaguely to handle the storage of the statue, decided the best place to store it would be to put it back on the platform that it originally was on down at the park. Some people
covered
saw
up
that as
in a tarp.
Yeah, it's covered up in a tarp, but some people saw that as this is a kind of a cheap way to get it back to where you wanted it to be. Some people want it back. In that particular case, Ori actually came up with a really level-headed position of Ori was like, the issue at hand is not whether the statue should be here or not. It's did the mayor handle it according to how they were instructed to handle it. So Ori had a very unemotional, but let's break this down and see what's going on approach. The other issue that's talked about quite commonly in Orillia is strong mayor powers, where a mayor can unilaterally decide to either veto a decision from council or make a decision without the approval of council. Ori's basically this is a provincial mandate that mayors have strong mayor powers now. So municipalities can't necessarily decide to not give their mayor strong mayor powers. But Ori's, in this particular case, was there should be a more transparent process around these strong mayor powers being used that helps the public understand, why the decision was made.
Ori formulates opinions or positions on things. And we talked about objectivity and subjectivity earlier, but it sounds like Ori does do a good job of establishing positions that are maybe neutral based on all the information collected. How do you develop an enforcement of durability of these positions? For example, maybe someone goes and asks for Ori's opinion on a particular position of this controversy you just mentioned. How do we ensure that Ori has that same position the next time someone asks?
Right now, I wouldn't say it's bulletproof, but one of the things that we've been trying to do, which is something that I think one of the things I mentioned about automating or making it more autonomous, is preserving positions autonomously. Right now, maybe once a week or so, as we go and look at what's been discussed, we look at the latest controversies or whatever, and we have Ori put together a position that goes on the website. And that information is used as part of some of the prompting and stuff like that. It's used as its own kind of knowledge base in a sense, so that literally to exactly handle that durability question. I think there could be more of that, but again, the answers are pretty consistent. At the end of the day,
one thing, just to add to that real quick, there's two types of positions that Ori may have. So Ori has currently 14 published positions, and in the chat interface, Ori's chat is aware of those 14 positions and will reference those positions. So that's one, and that's maybe a more bulletproof conversation because it's going to use its published position as its position while answering the question in the chat. And then there's topics where people ask that Ori doesn't have a published position on yet, or maybe just won't have a published position on it. And that's where, if there was going to be an opportunity for some sort of contradiction, that's probably where it would be versus the published positions that Ori has.
But actually, there's one more thing. Why don't you discuss that thing about revisions?
Yeah, that's an important thing. So we added this a couple days ago. Dave and I haven't read these 10,000 documents either, because the whole purpose of Ori is who wants to read these 10,000 documents. So we ran a script to have Ori go and then go out on the web and basically fact check all of your positions. And so what we've built into it is that Ori will fact check its positions and will show the changes that it made. There was a few just factual errors that we corrected. And then there was a few where it was factually true what Ori said, but it was lacking context. Mm-hmm. And so in the position, whenever you go read one of Ori's positions, when you scroll down to the bottom, it will show any revisions and it will show all the revision history within that position. So right now there's a few where Ori has updated a position based on a fact check or just adding more context, but it will show, here's the old version, here's what I took out, here's what I added in, and here's why.
So what you've described so far is like your strategy for context and memory management. You have this massive kind of knowledge base of the documents that it has ingested, lots of metadata so that it kind of knows where to go. But you also have these established positions that it obviously references, and I assume thinks about a question in context of those positions maybe first. But David, walk me through the back end. What's happening if someone types a question? Where does it go? How does it start referencing and finding the right information?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because it's not like a Google search, right? You're trying to make it conversational. You're trying to make it do what a person would do. And so one of the tricks that it does, so it doesn't just take the person's input and just like blindly go and look for documents, which wouldn't work very well. It does this really interesting thing, which it's called, there's a word for it, a name for it. It's called hide. And I don't know how popular it is, but it's hypothetical document embeddings. So what it is, it takes the person's input, it throws it into a cheap model like Haiku or something like that, and it develops a series of pretend documents. It takes that the input and it tries to rewrite it in the language of a municipal government person, in how they would talk, in order to better surface the right information when it goes in and hits the vector database. So it'll take those, it will translate the question that the user asked into a bunch of little documents, go out and do the vector searching, the similarity searching and stuff like that. It also will chop up the keywords and do a search for the keywords just in case. And then it'll take all the information back and throw that into Sonnet, basically. Right now it uses Sonnet. And then it will basically just blend all this stuff together and just come up with an answer. So a lot of leverage on LLMs, obviously.
Yeah, so that hide framework you mentioned, is that it's an embeddings strategy?
It's like a strategy for searching in a domain-specific repository, like a vector database, a domain-specific one, because you have to turn it into government speak, like as if someone types in, yo, what's up with the waterfront? Like, it's not going to search for that. It's going to, Orillia's waterfront. It's going to be like more expanded and more proper and stuff like that.
So it's like translation for both the model,
That's right.
but also translation into the government speak.
That's right.
For lack of a better term. That's interesting. Do you find that implementation of that hide framework, does it increase load or processing time?
It's slow. Yeah. Ori is slow as hell. It's not fast. And I think there's probably ways to optimize it, but it's not like the main. It would be nice if
it's slow from a developer's perspective. I think from a user's perspective, it probably seems pretty quick.
Yeah. But if you go and use it, you'll see, it takes 10 to 20 seconds to come up with an answer, which feels slow when comparing to ChatGPT. That's the benchmark that I'm using.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, you probably have higher standards than the average person.
Yeah. No, but as a technical person, that's all.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Okay. That's really interesting. What I also wanted to talk about was you probably have a lot of data about how people are using Ori, what kind of questions they're using. Tell me a little bit about that. What interesting trends are you seeing about how the citizens of Orillia or other people are engaging with Ori?
I can dive into that. I'm living in the back end, monitoring the chats quite often. There's very unsurprisingly, 10 to 20% of people, either there's your I hate AI people that are in there that are like asking it how much water it's using for every question. The vast majority of the conversations are people either trying to find a specific answer to something, people that are clearly curious about hot topics in Orillia. So the Champlain Monument is the hottest topic in Orillia right now. A lot of questions on just like, how would you handle it? They want to see, how does this compare to what I'm hearing from my current politicians? And then there's more and more people that are diving into either sharing their experiences with things that they're struggling with. There's a lot of people talking about, I don't drive, and living in certain pockets in Orillia, it's very hard to get to a grocery store and the buses are unreliable. And so people are dropping their grievances in and trying to get an understanding. There's people that are legitimately looking for a solution in there.
Jordan, and on a follow-up to that, for those engaged people that are asking good quality, interesting questions, how deep are they going into these chat threads? Like, is it one and done, or do they stick around for 5 minutes and ask follow-up questions? What do you see?
Yeah, I would say there's on the people that are seriously using this, which is the vast majority, I would say on average, it's like a 5 questions in, 5 answers out, maybe 6 in, 6 out type of conversation. There's plenty of people that are going 10, 12 questions deep into their conversation. And there's it's really encouraging to see there's people pushing back on Ori's answers. Like Ori is built to be impartial, but the residents in a city are not impartial, and they shouldn't be. Like, everyone has their own experience and desires, and there's people that are in there advocating for their particular hopes and dreams for the city. And that's where I think we'll get the really valuable information that is something that if I worked for a city, I would want to know this type of information.
Have you gotten any feedback, like word of mouth? Like, obviously you're getting feedback through the data you're getting in the usage, but just in talking to people that have used it, have you gotten feedback so far, and what's your kind of read on that feedback?
The general consensus is, wow, I really like how Ori laid that out. Because Ori will walk you through, I acknowledge your grievance or your question, here's the situation, and then here's my position. And we've flipped that around a little bit more, but basically those are the 3 elements. If I hear you, let me make sure I'm getting this right. Here's the situation, here's the reality of what the city's working with, and then here's how I would handle it.
But then also, it'll ask them more. It'll say, what do you think about it? What would you like to change? What is it? I think that's another kind of interesting thing that it does.
And you had to, those are deliberate design decisions, right? You program that in.
Yes.
That's really interesting. It's something we're seeing more with LLMs that you didn't see maybe 2 years ago, where there was a lot less follow-up questions from working with tools like Claude and ChatGPT. So it's interesting to see that more, but it's also interesting to see that as a design choice in this context of a tool that's used to help citizens engage with their government.
Yeah,
I think you're seeing it more because I think you're seeing that the improvements on the models, they follow your directions and your intent so much better now.
Yeah.
Like you could jailbreak these models. Someone threw together something like this 2 years ago. You could get around and get it to ignore its instructions. And there was someone in there today trying to figure out how to get Ori to break its rules. And Ori was like, no, I'm not doing that.
That's fascinating. David, last point here before we wrap up. Can you talk a little bit about the roadmap, both technical roadmap and maybe just other, like from a future perspective, what's in store for Ori 2.0?
I'm sure Jordan has his own ideas, but I think generally this is not our main day job kind of thing. So we're just building it. It's a hobby. We're trying to see where it goes. If anything commercial comes of it, then great. We're trying to see where it's useful, who finds it useful, who finds it valuable. Those are the questions I would say that we're just trying to answer right now. And also for fun, how can we make it, what do we think is going to be more interesting? For example, like the full autonomy thing. How do you make it do that? Is that something that we want it to do? Is it even necessary to do? I don't know. So I wouldn't say we have a roadmap. I think we're just going day by day. What cool idea comes up, we just do it. So we'll just see how it goes, how it takes shape.
Yeah. Jordan, did you have any other
Yeah,
thought?
I think the possibilities of Ori are huge, but we don't know if there's a desire or a need for this. I've said in some other interviews about this, we're trying to figure out where is AI a useful tool in this space and where is it not a useful tool. And if there was going to be a useful tool, what would that look like? You can build all these tools that you think are cool, and then if people don't care about them or use them, then maybe it wasn't all that cool. So we're, like Dave said, we're very much just letting this sort of go where it goes. I think there's huge potential. There's certain limitations right now on Ori just because of the fact that Dave and I are just doing this in addition to all the other things we have going on, funding it ourselves. And there's places where we could go a lot deeper, but there's just not necessarily, it's not ready for that yet.
Right. And what I love about working with both of you is, David, you're the founder of Startup Orillia. Jordan, I guess you're like a founding member. You were one of the first people there. But what you guys have been doing since I joined is just creating like utility for the people and citizens of Orillia. Like, David, I remember one of the first projects I came across that you'd worked on was rebuilding a website that just helps make it easier to find events and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So we like doing projects that bring value to people, to ourselves. We live here and we want to make it better. And just that AI makes it so easy to bring value to things. So we've been doing that. Those projects are a lot of fun. The city has been really receptive. They now sponsor Startup Orillia. They are looking to incorporate that rec center website into their own website stack, essentially. So things like that are happening, and I think it's only going to make the town a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And big shout out to Startup Orillia and for all the great work that the group is doing.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for joining the interview today. It was really exciting to listen to you talk about Ori and what went into it, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you around.
Appreciate
See you
it.
at the next meetup.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Take care.